So I'm like a third generation Holocaust survivor. Like my grandparents were Holocaust survivors. Obviously, that trauma impacted them majorly, and it impacted their ability and the way they parented my dad and his brothers. From the and I never really thought about that before, but I still feel there are things that are just sort of like ingrained in my being. And I think we all probably have them from our own experiences, whether it's like culturally or, just like, in your unique family system, whatever it is. But it's like, there's definitely like an inherited hypervigilance that I have that I feel like in great part comes from that, because there was this sort of state of constant fear and vigilance.
Is that like anxiety? Does it like kind of come in form of an anxiety?
So I think sometimes it's anxiety, and I think sometimes it's just like a very deep-rooted awareness of what everyone else is feeling around me and everything that's happening around me.
All right, my ladies. What did you think, Jill, about the topics? When you're the cycle breaker, healing while parenting, co-parenting with your opposite, can it work? Raising kids in a digital world, a very important one. And then when motherhood isn't what you thought it would be.
Honestly, I feel like at some point we need to do all of them because they're all, right? I feel like they're all important, and we'd have really great conversations around all of them. You guys know one of my favorite topics to talk about is cycle breaking. So many of the parents that I work with are going through this where they're trying to do things in a different way, but we're like all sort of battling the way that we're wired in order to do that. And it's something that I think about a lot. I sort of recognize where I'm more successful at it than other times. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about because I just think it's something that so many parents in our generation are trying to do. And it's really hard. It's really hard. And sometimes I think it feels you're like fighting a losing battle. You're not, but it can feel that way.
Absolutely. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do cycle breaking, healing, all the good stuff. Because I know, Taisha, I know, Jill, you have some really amazing things to say. Michelle will have her opinions later. It's so important to piggyback on what we were discussing on the last episode, which is so important. Taisha, Michelle, and I were just talking about how we had a spanking, a beating, however you want it, la chancla. We went into so many, the tomato throwing of my mother. Good times. No, but all on the real, like someone said, and I don't remember, somebody was saying they didn't have the tools. I think it was Michelle. Michelle was saying that her mom and her dad, or both, were admiring how Michelle and her brother were parenting now, and how they were having the parenting thing that they were doing was so much better than in their day. That was a little vague on Michelle's end, but I think that our parents love us. Obviously, they raised us the best they could, but no, they didn't have all the answers. I really want to talk about how technology today, social media, all kind of plays into our parenting right now. At least for me, I'll look on an account with a coach or a preschool teacher, and I'll say, that is a brilliant idea. Why didn't I think about that before? And I'm going to apply it immediately in my life. Whereas our parents in other generations didn't have that community. I don't know how to describe social media. Is it a community? Is it a place of information? Is it a place of good and bad things?
All of that,
right?
Yeah, it's really what you make it and what you're following. Depends on what type of community, what type of advice, what type of support that you're getting off of social media. And you're right, Jackie. Our parents did not have those things. They only had word of mouth, and generations before them. For those of us who are faith-based, a lot of the rearing came from the Christian, from the good old Bible. You know what I'm saying? But it depends on how they utilized and interpreted the Bible. Whatever religious belief they had, that's what a lot of them went on. And for us, my ancestors, of course, though we started out as kings and queens, it instantly flipped to us being a part of slavery. So the behavior changed, the mindset changed due to those things. And that mindset of slavery is what passed
right.
down more so than the mindset of
Oh,
king
Yep.
and queen.
that is
So
that
the
is deep stuff, girl. That is deep, deep
girl,
stuff.
listen, the discipline came from that slave mentality. I'm going to beat you to break you into submission.
Mm,
If you do something wrong, you get a whipping. If you do this, this happens. We weren't taught anything else. Each generation, I feel, is going to get better
yep.
and better. Hence, the generation changes in the circumstances happening because we have more
Yep.
access. We are regaining that power of, baby, listen, part of our ancestry is slavery, but we're kings and queens, and we're getting that mentality back of we are royalty, and this is not how royalty
Mhm.
is treated. So let's work on our mindset. Let's shift those things. Let's talk about emotional intelligence. Let's parent our kids accordingly. How do I do that? I can't ask mom, I can't ask grandma because they is little to none that they know about it. So I go and research. When you want to know something, we look it up. We don't necessarily have encyclopedias
Mm,
anymore. We have social media, we have videos, and there
The
are so many
internet.
people. Listen, we have so many people who study said things
yeah.
and they give us information. And if it's some information that you don't necessarily agree with, you have the resources at your fingertip to go and do more research. But it has to be a mind shift that says, I want something
Mm,
different. There has to be
yep.
more. And though we like to keep traditions, some traditions are absolutely amazing. But some things is like, I just want to do better. My mom wasn't a teen mom. My aunts, none of them was teen moms, but I was a teen mom. And I have literally been counting down. We are 5 days away from my baby being 20 and she doesn't have a child. To me,
Mm,
that's a huge thing.
mhm.
You know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
yeah.
To
I
her,
felt that.
that
I
Yeah.
felt
is,
that when you said that on
listen,
social media. I
Yeah.
was like,
girl,
congratulations as a mama.
Yes.
You must feel like you
listen.
broke that.
Yeah.
Listen, God's grace is so sufficient. And she's just as happy as I am because it's one of those things where I'm going to do better. I want better. When we have that mindset, and that's the mindset we
Mhm.
push, and that's the mindset that we work on, then we begin to see the shift. We begin to reach out to the Jills. We begin to reach out to the Michelles, the Taishas, and the Jackies to be like, listen, I need
Mhm.
help. How do I, parent this child in this area
Yep.
of their life? I did this
Mhm.
and I don't think it's that good. So maybe with what Jill had and with what I have, if I mix it together, I have my own
Mhm.
formula to raise said
Mhm.
child because that formula
Right.
is not going to work for
Yep.
child B, C,
That's
D,
right.
or E because every
That's
child
right.
is different. So just learning the basic fundamental of childhood
Yep.
development is the
So
start.
important.
And having those people who's not gonna judge you and those who be like, oh, you think you better than everybody, or you think your child more
Right.
special
Can we
because
talk
you're
about that
Mhm.
too? The mom
because
shame and the
Mhm.
mom guilt
and it's
and the
just like,
blaming.
no, I don't think I'm better. I am
Yeah,
wanting
that's
better.
right.
So in order for me to want better, I have to go and get better so I can be better. Like that's the goal. I hope the goal for
Yeah.
everybody is to be better than we were
Yeah.
yesterday. Be better than we were just a moment ago. And that comes
Yeah.
from gaining
Don't you feel like
knowledge.
some of that, though, people, their defenses go up because if you're doing things differently, then it makes them feel like you're judging them or
They're
they're
listening.
less than or
Yes.
they were bad. Like, I feel there's a lot of that. And this is what clients express to me. They'll feel that from like parents or their mother in law or whatever, because it's sort of like, oh, I was so bad. You have to do it totally different. Like, it was so bad. And it's
Differently.
like, maybe you need to think about why you're feeling like that in response to it, Right?
Projection.
Exactly. But I do think there's a lot of that. And honestly, even amongst peers, I'm sure you guys have felt this at different times when you're hanging with other parents and you're making choices that are different. There's definitely a certain level of judgment that could, not always, but that could
Mhm.
come up. And a lot of the time, I feel like that comes from your own insecurity and projection.
But how do we deal with those feelings, right? How do we deal with those?
Yeah.
Because I just learned how to
Yes.
deal with those. I'll be
Yes.
honest with you. I wasn't fully
It's really,
aware
I mean,
of
look,
them. How do
it's
you
really
guys deal
hard,
with
but I
them?
think, some of it comes from like, you have to have enough conviction in yourself and what you're doing
Yep.
that you're just kind of like, everything else is noise. Like, I might hear it, but it's not going to like,
Okay.
kind of penetrate. It's like, okay, thank you for your opinion. So I
Right.
think some of that is the conviction and the self-assuredness that comes with age, experience, and confidence, or you're seeing. Like, I think what helps me, it's not a perfect system, obviously, because kids are not robots. So you don't put in a formula and then poof, that's not how that works. But at the same time, I do think that to a certain degree, the proof is in the pudding. When I look at my child and I see her able in a difficult moment to like use a tool to regulate herself at 4, I'm like, I struggle with that. And I'm 35 years older. So it's like,
Right.
I think that like those are the moments where I'm kind of like, okay, there's something to this. I know there's something I'm doing here that's benefiting her to put her in a position where things that were really hard for me maybe will be, life is hard, so things are going to happen, but that she'll have more tools,
Yes.
So I think that
Yes.
helps,
Yes.
like when you actually see the difference of like, hey, I'm putting in all this work and look, like she's mentally healthy. That's an emotionally healthy person, right? Like they,
And it's
right? And like what
beautiful.
you were saying, Taisha, when you look at your daughter and you're like, look at her at 20, like doing it. Some of that, of course,
Yes.
is them, like they're their own people. And some of that is me and the choices that I made and the work that I put in to help that happen.
Yes.
So that I think helps. We've come back to this theme so many times in different conversations, which is this idea, and I think it's true with our kids too, actually. Can you be curious and not judgmental? You could be such a happier human being if we could approach things with more of a curious lens than a lens of judgment. My child is doing some crazy behavior, some things come out, whatever, rather than like immediately going into judgment of that behavior. Maybe instead there's a moment of like, I wonder why this is happening, right? Totally different lens. So I
Yes.
feel like the same thing is true when people hate on what you're doing or give you their unsolicited
Yep.
advice and their opinion, whatever. It's kind of the same thing. It's like, all right, well, like, what's up with you? Like, what? I wonder what you're
Yeah.
feeling to say that to me, kind of thing.
Right. But it takes a lot of
It does.
self-awareness
It
to
does.
know
It's a
that.
lot of work.
And what I've grown to realize is social work school for me was like a aha moment, right? Because in that I've learned that different people go through different things, and not to necessarily judge, but know there's always a deeper root to a situation. A lot of times when people are doing something that's different than what I do or what I know, it's not a look of judgment, it's a look of trying to figure out, okay, should they be diagnosed? What did they do different? What happened to cause them to be this way? Why are they so protective? Why are they so angry? Why are they lashing out? Why are they so reserved? And even with parenting, like, and I just use my daughter for an example, I had issues with boundaries. I had issues with that. I would still allow people to, come in and out of my life. I didn't voice my opinion and my feelings about a lot of things, but I know how that made me feel, and I didn't want that for her. So I began to show her how to. Even in high school, she'd be like, my social battery is dying. I need a break. Or I am going to excuse myself from this conversation because I don't want to get upset. I don't want to be a part of this environment because it's not healthy. It's very toxic. When she initially did it, I was just like, girl. And then I had to come back and I was like, but that's what
That's
you
right.
want her to do. Those are the things that you've encouraged her, that you've instilled in her. So now you take note of what you show her and do it for yourself. And it's okay because we learn
Oh my
from our
gosh, all the
kids.
time.
We're so used to teaching
Yep.
them. We teach them, but we don't necessarily take the lessons for ourselves until
That's
we
right.
see it. And it'd be like, you know
Yep.
what? I like that. I'm going to start
Yep.
doing that. And I've always said I wanted to
Same.
be a real model for my child and not a role model. So with being a real model, I had to show her real things. And that was me transparent. Like she saw
I like
all of
that.
me. Like literally, again, like we grew up
Yeah.
together. So she saw the good, ugly, bad, and
Yeah.
indifferent. Even when I didn't think she saw the pain that mama was going through with every situation, she saw
Yeah.
it and was able to maneuver accordingly. So I had a cousin, like, and like when I see new parents and stuff, in the back of my mind, I'm like, dang, I want to do over. I need to redo that part because that's good. She would make her own baby food, like the games and stuff you be posting with your baby Jill. I'd be like, oh my God, that
I
is so
know.
cool.
I
Like,
love it.
dang,
Love it.
I want me another,
Can I
but
have your job, Jill?
listen, because it looks so fun, right? So I be trying to take little different stuff and I do it with my nephews, but it's only for a little while because they're not
Yeah.
mine. So it's not something that I could make
Yep.
constant. It's things like that. When you have the heart and the mindset to be like, I want different
That's
will
so true.
start happening.
I want to,
Until then, we're gonna be stuck in the same cycles.
but I feel like, Taish, you brought up something before that I've thought about a little bit myself, this idea of generational trauma and how that, because I think so much
Yeah.
of the experiences we had when we were kids, the choices some of that our parents made, right? A lot of that was influenced by the choices their parents made and their parents. And everyone's always
Right.
doing the best they can with the tools they have. I think about that with our kids all
Right.
the time. They have all the feelings, none of the tools. They're just doing the best they can. And I feel like that's true for adults too. Everyone is kind of just doing what they can with what they have. I'm like a third generation Holocaust survivor. My grandparents were Holocaust
Yeah.
survivors. So that definitely, obviously, that trauma impacted them majorly. And it impacted their
Yeah.
ability and the way they parented my dad and his brothers. And
100%.
I think my
Yeah.
dad, in many ways, broke a lot of cycles. I never really thought about that before, but I still feel there are things that are just sort of ingrained in my being. I think we all probably have them from our own experiences, whether it's culturally or in your unique family system, whatever it is. There's definitely like an inherited hypervigilance that I have that I feel like in great part comes from that because there was this state of constant fear and vigilance.
Is that like anxiety?
Yes,
Does it like kind of come in form of an
so I think sometimes
anxiety?
it's anxiety and sometimes it's just sort of like the best way I could describe it for me is that's like a very deep-rooted awareness of what everyone else is feeling around me and everything that's happening around me. Always being on guard. And I think some of that comes through this like feeling of like the world feeling unsafe. And that coupled with the fact of like what the state of our world is right now is right. Like where, so I feel like that's definitely one that I feel. And until Taisha said that, I just never really thought about that before and how much of that is actually wired into my DNA. I feel like we all carry our own stuff of that. And then that affects these
Something.
cycles because you're not only making a choice, it is quite literally hardwired into you to respond to things in certain ways. I know even when my daughter has big meltdowns, what I feel in my body, really, it feels like it's like a 5-alarm fire emergency. Everything in my body is responding to it like that. And I have to kind of like then use my tools. And sometimes I get it better than others, but to kind of bring myself back to like, this is not an emergency. You have to be grounded to help her through it. But I think some of that is connected. I think that it's like some of it is like, yes, there was probably experiences that I had growing up where my big feelings were not welcome. When you go through that
Yeah.
a lot, you learn how to just not shut it down. You learn how to not.
Suck it up.
Exactly. You become very aware of, oh, when I do this, everyone else gets upset, so I'm not going to do that. You learn it from a young age. Or it's like we were talking about last week, the punishment doesn't fit the crime. You're like, well, I want that to happen again, so I'm not going to ever do that. You shut down that part of yourself to not have that experience. I think some of it is that, and some of it is just this other stuff that lives deep within that's kind of like your body is just on higher alert. It's complicated because mentally, And I think so many parents that are trying to break cycles feel this in different ways. It's like mentally, you know what the healthier choice would be in this moment, what you're meant to do. But actually doing that is really different because your body and brain are sometimes fighting with each other. And I think that's where therapy is everything. I feel like everyone should just be in therapy, but like
Absolutely.
every parent should be in therapy.
If you're
Mhm.
resisting
Like,
therapy,
yeah, just
stop.
go. Like,
Stop
just
resisting
go.
therapy.
Just go. But I feel like that's, learning and understanding yourself better and learning what your triggers are, right? How to regulate yourself, because you can't help a child through that if you can't help yourself.
Can't.
Oh, you can't. Like
Yes. Because we'll pitch
that's
a
right.
fit.
And then it's just like pouring gasoline on the fire, right? If your kid is in that and then your feelings are, then we're just cycling through and it's just going to keep getting worse, bigger and bigger. Someone has to be there to extinguish that. And your child is not going to be the one with all of their, when they're like,
Right.
they're just not. That part of their brain is not developing until like their mid 20s, right? So fully anyway.
Mhm.
But I feel like that's one also that is coming up for me as we're having this conversation is sort of that like you're fighting what often feels like a losing battle because these things are so ingrained in us. And like I really do feel sometimes that, we have this idea of what trauma means and some of it is really clear, but there are these
Right.
lower case T traumas, these other things that we experience that maybe are not living through a war or something of to that extent, but that very much do affect who you are and the way you develop and the way you then are able to handle other things as you get older. So I feel like that's a lot of what parents now are experiencing, knowing they want to make a change, but also fighting the battle of these things that have been ingrained into their being. And, that's really difficult, really, really difficult.
Yeah,
Right.
so many points right there, Jill. Like,
She
just
did.
like, I'm just like, it's actually, and it's in a good way, so overwhelming and so great because you took me back to like being a
Mhm.
Latina, just like, um, having parents immigrate
Mhm.
from a third world
Mhm. Mhm.
country and what that entailed. I just want to share this real
Yeah.
quick because I think that not a lot of people know. But I might just cry.
Yeah.
I might just
Yeah.
cry. You know, so my mom came legally, right? Let's use that the proper terms here. She didn't cross the border illegally. She did it the right way, like Michelle said the other day in another episode. We go through these very scary moments when we want to go back to the motherland, let's say just to visit grandma and
Mm.
grandpa, just to visit
Mhm.
family. As a child growing up, having been born in the United States, but having a mom who has so much love for her parents and wanted to be that model daughter and love them and put them first. I saw a struggle just with the traveling back and forth.
Mm.
And so in a very microscopic way, and I say microscopic because she had legal documentation to go back and forth from country to
Mhm.
country. So as a child going from country to country, it was still really tough to do that traveling. Sometimes we had to do it through land. Sometimes we had to do it through air, through an airplane. And I think about these things because every time we would go to Guatemala or come back, we would have to face these very scary Border Patrol agents. And it was something that always stuck with me as a 5-year-old, 6-year-old at the time. And then obviously later I got used to it. It was always so scary to cross
Mhm.
the border. So I, in a very minimal way, can only imagine not having
Mhm.
permission to come in as a child. Even when I did have permission to come in as a child and my mom had permission to come in, my mom would still be in high alert, very much about anxiety, very much about doing the right thing. Are you okay? Have your passport in hand. Like all of this anxiety that came with just
Yeah.
traveling. I guess what I'm saying is hypervigilance about being an immigrant in this country has been, like, you touched upon it a little bit, Jill, when you said that, and speaking about being a third generation Holocaust survivor, and all of this stuff comes up because in our countries we have a lot of gangs. When we're in the motherland, Guatemala, I grew up understanding and knowing you got to be careful in the streets. Period.
Oh yeah.
You can get, you can get pickpocketed. Don't wear your golden earrings. Don't wear your golden chain. Your life is on the line. So there are a lot of things that we grew up with, I guess is my point, right? That like DNA is something that it's a untold story within us. And sometimes that reaction is something that we won't understand unless we know our history, right? But I just wanted to bring that up and also validate anyone that's listening to this and that feels like home to you. Why you are so hyper vigilant, why you don't let your kids out of the house, or why you don't let them walk to school, or why you don't open the door. It's still so scary to live in a world where it is a free country, but that's not how you grew up. It wasn't a free country for you. It was a free country for everyone else except for you. I'm a U.S. citizen and my mom is now a U.S. citizen. So it was still so scary. But anyways, I just want to touch upon even that generational trauma. If that feels home to you, I just wanted to highlight that
I'm glad that you
briefly.
said that. It made me think, do you guys ever read
Right.
anything or watch anything from Gabor Mate, the psychologist?
Oh, yes.
He's amazing.
I love him.
Taisha, you would
He's
love.
amazing.
So much
Start
of his
watching
work
it.
is around trauma and different types of trauma, how trauma affects, kids and all these different things. But he talks about in his personal experience, his mom in the Holocaust, like essentially like abandoned him. As I understand, like I think to save him. But he talks about how like the abandonment just like is so deep rooted in his being. And he tells this story that like I won't do as well as he does, so I hope people will look it up. But he tells this story basically of like his wife, who I believe is an artist, and she was in a painting, like in a session, she just was really into it and forgot to pick him up from the airport. And like the level at which the response, like what he felt was to that, and the level of betrayal, and how sort of like making that connection between this deep fear of abandonment from people who love you. And so he talks a lot about things like this, so many different examples. That's just one from him personally, from his story. How these things that we go through when we're young shape who we are, and how sometimes it's so rooted in us that if you haven't done the work, you don't even know why, to your point, Jackie, you're responding in the way you're responding. An example of someone who has done a lot of work and was able to step out of that and look at it like, she loves you. Right? She's not leaving you. This was not like a purposeful, it was an unfortunate thing that happened. But it isn't, that story. And I think that that's another one that so many of us in cycle breaking or grappling with at different levels, right? Is sort of like, negotiating those things and having an awareness of, why does this get me so much? Like going back to like the tantrum example, if you have young kids at home, why is that so activating? Is it because, like, is it just naturally when someone is screaming at that volume for a long period of time, like that would get any of us, right? So like some of it is that maybe.
Right.
But, is it that when you were growing up, emotions like that weren't tolerated? So there's something in you that is wired to shut it down, right? Like, is it that? Is it, like, were you a kid who was deeply emotional and was always told to stop crying, stop yelling, right? Like, yeah, I'm like me too. And that's how we all we all found each other. But like, I think these different things, like when you have the ability, and this again, why therapy is so important, to work through some of that and have the awareness, it doesn't mean it stops the trigger response, right? That response might still come up in your body, but it does give you the ability to then be like, okay, self, thank you for trying to help me.
You're
We're
safe.
safe. We've talked about this before, like mantras you can say to yourself in parenting in those moments when your like response is getting activated. And that's one of mine. And another one of mine is this is not an emergency. Like I feel like the amount of times that like it happened yesterday, my daughter accidentally spilled something and immediately, it's like, oh my gosh, is like my reaction. It's just like, it just comes out. I just can't even
Same,
like,
girl.
oh my God, like the milk, and it's like, is it that serious? And I now know myself well enough to know that most of the time, I can't stop my first reaction. It just pours out of me. It's too fast. And then in that moment, I feel like, okay, it just came out. But what I can do is then like take a second and sort of laugh at myself like we are now. And then say a
Right.
comment to my daughter like, was there a boulder rolling down the hallway at me about to run us over and flatten us? No.
Oh,
Like,
that's
is there a
sweet.
fire and we have to get out of the building? No. Why? I wonder why mama reacted that way. This was not an emergency. And I sort of like, because I can't control the first
Love
response. So I guess like that's
that.
something maybe whatever the equivalent is for you listening. Sometimes you just can't, or you try your best and sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't. But you can always repair.
Sometimes you
And
don't.
sometimes repair is like apologizing. Hey, like I yelled before I raised my voice. That probably was really scary. You didn't deserve that. And I'm sorry, right? So there's that. Or sometimes it looks like that, where it's just like, whoo, like, what was that reaction? And it kind of like, reminds us like mama needs to
So
chill. Like
cute.
we spilled and we cleaned it in 2 seconds. Like everyone has to relax. So I guess also saying that to anyone listening that it's not going to be something that just happens. And in some things, it might never fully happen, but there's still an opportunity after the fact. And I think that's something like most of us didn't get. I don't think we ever got apologies, right? Or
Right.
processing after,
Not as
right? Not as
kids.
kid. Yeah.
Not as kids,
Right.
right?
Like no one was saying like, whoa, I had a really disproportionate reaction to that. Like, eek. That just didn't really happen.
I love that tool,
Right?
Jill. Thank
feel like
you. I'm going to use
Do
that.
it. It actually really helps. And it's now become this thing where like even my daughters sometimes will make a joke. Like my mom had a big reaction to something when she was over here like a couple of weeks ago. And Ray said, Mimi, is there a fire? Was there a boulder? Like she started, like I hear her saying it to my mom. And I'm like, you know what? Like if there's something in that helps her when she makes a mistake, be a little kinder to herself,
Then let it be.
then
Right. Right.
whatever.
That's called
That's right.
grace. That's us. That is us giving grace. So for those who need a practical of what does giving myself grace looks like, it looks like what Jill just explained. Grace looks like apologizing to yourself. Like, come on, y'all. We are so hard on
Oh
ourselves.
God.
Not just as parents, but
As
as
people.
individuals, because it's just like, I gotta get it right or I
Yep.
can't get it right. And God forbid you are that person who was told you ain't gonna never be
Yeah,
nothing or you ain't gonna
right.
never get it right. It weighs on you even
Yep.
heavier. A part of what I do as the parent healer, those are a lot of the avenues we go down, because it starts with foundational things. Like, how can we build a house if we don't have a foundation? The roof don't go
That's right.
on first. The foundation is laid and you build accordingly. How many times have roofs have to be repaired in homes?
So
Doors, new paint jobs, new interior decoration. All of that stuff can be replaced and changed out as time
Yep.
progresses. But that foundation is solid. That foundation is what keeps it all together. So let's start rebuilding our
Yeah.
foundation. I'm talking about brick by brick, piece by piece. And when the foundation is done in love, it covers everything else.
It
But
really
there
does.
has to be love. There has to be self-love, love for others. But most importantly, we got to love others like we love ourselves. Like
That's right.
that's
That's
literally,
right.
Love that.
and that goes for our
Mhm.
kids too, because our kids is that other
Yes.
person. And Okay, so Taisha, what if I don't know how to love myself?
There you
That's a
go.
big one because a lot of people don't know how to
Mhm.
love themselves. They don't know
That's
how to
right.
love themselves because they were taught loving themselves is
Yep.
selfish. Loving
That's right.
yourself is selfless because if you can't love yourself, then you're going to not have
Yep.
boundaries. You're going to allow
Mhm.
people to run over you. You're
That's
not
right.
going to know how to speak for yourself. You won't be assertive. You won't know that it's okay to extend grace to yourself and
Mhm.
others. So just start becoming aware. There are books available. This podcast, Chef Kisses, baby, listen. Like, if this is your first time watching us, go back to the beginning. Like, there are a lot of gems
True.
dropped. You hear me? The mom
That's
telling is
right, ma'am.
key.
That is
Listen,
right.
go get Petals of Love, Chronicles of the Imperfectly Perfect Mother. It's some gems in
It's
there
true.
too. Follow
Absolutely.
our social media
100%.
platforms. There are so many gems. And we're not saying we know everything, but we know enough. So we don't mind saying, well, I don't know. How about listening to this
Yes.
person? Because I'll tell you quick, baby, y'all go holler at Jill with them babies, because I don't know. Like
I got you. I got
that,
you.
you know. Listen, you got a complex kid. Go
That's
holler
right.
at Michelle because I don't know.
I don't know
If you
either.
starting all the way
Yeah.
over and you got grown kids and you have a toddler, a baby, go holler at Jackie because I don't know. I can't relate.
That's right.
But you have to be okay with saying
Yep.
you don't know and pointing people in the right direction. Because if not, y'all are going to mess somebody up trying to operate in a space that you're not graced
Mhm.
for.
I love
I
you,
love you guys
ladies.
too.
I love you,
Love you.
ladies. Michelle was not with us today. Something really urgent came up. So we're going to continue this convo in next week's episode. But I just wanted to invite you real quick. Follow our social media platform. It's the_mom_panel. I'm going to start raffling every month as soon as I get them. They're almost here. I'm going to start every month raffling a mom panel bag. It's for groceries and it says mama.
Cute.
And it's beautiful. Yes. So every month, if you follow us on social media, if you rate us and give us a like on social media on the post that I will be showcasing every month, I'll give you the instructions. Then again, I will enter you guys into a raffle for this beautiful tote bag and a copy of the Petals of Love. So that will be the prize.
I got you,
yes. Yes, girl. And then I might throw in a couple others. So please do that. And we're going to see you guys next week. We love you so much. Have a wonderful week. And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye, ladies.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.